How's it going? Andrew here, and welcome to another episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. In this episode, I've got something a little bit different for you. I've received quite a few emails recently with a lot of questions regarding me and my art journey and my own particular approach to my art business. People want to know about how I make it work as an artist. So I thought in this episode, it would be a good idea to have my young friend Cody, who lives in Colorado in the United States, to interview me. So if you can stand listening to me for the next hour and a half, then stick around. This is going to be questions relating to my own personal art journey so far. So with all of that said, I really hope you enjoy this episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. All right, well, look, let's just jump into it. Cody, great to see you. Look, we've been talking. Let me just let people know that are listening. We've been talking on and off for the last probably about 3 years now. You first emailed me a while ago, showing me some examples of your work, and I was just blown away by the quality.
Yeah, we started talking. My first email I sent you was in December of 2016.
Wow. Okay.
And we first started talking.
I just want to just cut in here for one second, because just to let people know, if you hear that strange row sound in the background, it's because Cody and his family rehabilitate rescued mountain lions in Colorado. And how many mountain lions do you have on your property?
6. We have 6.
Gee, that's a lot of big cats. That's a lot of killing machines right there. Beautiful animals though, right?
Very, very beautiful.
So let's jump into this. I think it's fantastic opportunity to do a podcast in a little bit of a different way, Cody, because you have emailed me some questions that are just fantastic questions. A lot of questions that people would love to have answers to. And I just thought, well, these are actually really commonly asked questions. And I'm normally writing back to people on an individual basis. So I thought, what a great way. Let's just take one of our normal coaching sessions that you and I do, and let's just throw these out there to the world and just give you the opportunity to ask me these questions. Really, yeah, I think it will fill in a lot of gaps for people. So should we just jump into it?
All right. Let's see here. How did you start your art career?
When and how did I start my art career? Yeah. That's a tough one, because I started my career. I was always very serious. I was a bit like you. I mean, you're a young guy. You take your art very seriously. So
Yeah.
I would almost be, asking you the same thing. When did you start your art career? And you'd be like, well, I've already started. I started years ago, So it's the same to me. The paintings that you're doing, let's jump into this, because there's something that I really admire about you, Cody, about the quality of your work and the variety of the subjects that you tackle. And I was a lot like that when I first started out. I was not quite to the same extent that your family is, but I was surrounded by animals, because I grew up basically having to go to the zoo every weekend, school holiday, you name it, because both my parents actually worked in zoos as I was growing up. So I had constant inspiration that way. And I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be an artist. So it was a kind of a natural transition to kind of go into a career doing that. I did have the support and encouragement of my father, who was, before he was working at the zoo, he was a professional sculptor. He pretty much took about a 10-year hiatus to work at the zoo for an income before going back to it again professionally. But some of my first commercial jobs were when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, doing professional, like commercial art work for companies. My biggest client, though, was the zoo. So it was a bit of an inside job there, but I would do graphics and logos for the zoo. And when we moved to Australia, it was a Perth Zoo mainly that I was doing that for. So if there was a
Mhm.
if there was a sign to go up, for say the new reptile house, or there was
Yeah.
animatronic dinosaurs that came to the zoo. They did this thing called Jurassic Park back in the day. And my job as a kid was to do. Dad just said, "Hey, you like drawing T Rex?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to do it for a sign?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I drew and then I covered it with paint and did this big T Rex to match the animatronic T Rex, and then that was sitting on the big billboard as you drive into the zoo. So
Wow.
I kind of got a taste for that, from a very early age, and those were some really important lessons. It naturally kind of prepared me to go into the professional world, and I started painting professionally when I was 21. But I must
21.
say, you know, it has changed over the years. The way that I conduct myself and do business, the different types of businesses that I'm involved in now, it has changed. It's evolved. It's gone through a
Yeah.
progression. So, I guess that covers a little bit of the why and the how, or when and the how. Beg your pardon. Um, but I think the thing that people mainly would want to know is, a lot of people are interested in becoming professional artists, making a living doing this, because it's an unusual way to make a living. Not many people do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, 21, I'd have to say I was 21 years of age when I left my job, and my only
Mhm.
source of income was art. And that was the last job I had. Um, and that job, if you want to know, or anybody else wants to know, was working in a giant milk fridge for a
Oh,
very big dairy company in Western Australia. And I basically I joked at the time that my job was to turn on the light anytime somebody opened the door. But
oh.
yeah, it wasn't a very glamorous job. It was very smelly and very cold. And I got
Wow.
out of there, man. I got out of there at 21, and it was selling paintings and drawings for me from there on out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
So does
are we
that
ready?
does that answer it?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah,
So
I
should
really,
we should we jump into your second question? We've got a few questions to get through here,
yeah,
and
we do.
I do have the tendency to talk a lot. So let's get on with
That's
number
all.
two.
That's what this is all about. Hearing, kind of hearing about your kind of story and how you kind of got your whole career going.
Absolutely.
All right. What were your biggest challenges and when you started and how did you overcome them? That's
Wow.
interesting to me to
Yeah.
hear. Really curious.
You know, it's funny because when we start thinking about, what our career is going to be like from the outset, we have this kind of tendency to embellish and create this fantasy of what we think it's going to be like. I certainly did starting out. I
Okay.
thought, I'm never going to take direction from anybody. I'm not gonna have a boss. And whilst that's true in a certain sense, I also thought, I'm going to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Did certainly have some fantasy about it being easy. Um, and the main challenges started to appear within the first couple of years in a very big way. You know,
Hmm.
the biggest challenge with being a professional artist is, you know, you don't have anybody to rely on for your source of income. It actually comes down to you. And whilst that might seem like a bit of a no-brainer and a bit of a like, well, duh, Andrew, of course, that security of being able to rely on a paycheck from somebody else, there's a certain amount of comfort that brings. And it is something that I must admit from time to time I do miss. I do miss that sense of being able to rely on something that you can count on. Um,
Right.
so one of the things that I realized from the outset, when I was just starting out very young, I realized I'm going to have a drive and a discipline here to ensure that I get paid. Because if
Right.
it's going to be, it's up to me, as the old, saying goes. So I had
Mhm.
to make sure that I totally committed myself and worked out some sort of system to be able to produce so that I could rely on um, a reliable source of income. Therein lied the biggest challenge for me, because that challenge, took the form of, discipline. I didn't have any.
Yeah.
Starting out, like I was a serious person. I was serious about my art. I really wanted to make it work, but
Yeah.
I wasn't really prepared for the amount of hours that would take. And I got
Mhm.
lucky, and my luck and my good fortune earlier in my career caused me to get a little bit lazy and a little bit complacent. And I started to kind of just rest and relax into the fact that I might be able to get by just by doing knocking out a painting here and there. But when the bottom falls out of the economy, or the client doesn't show up, and you're left holding the painting, holding the bag, so to speak, what are you going to do? And so that discipline was something that I felt I needed, to make sure that I always produced over and above whatever was required, whatever was asked of me.
Right.
And without somebody there pushing you, without a boss, or having somebody that was actually set the pace, set the disciplines, and was able to say, all right, you need to show up at 9 o'clock, and this is your job, and you can leave when it's done. It's difficult to rely on yourself for that.
Mhm.
So I think self-discipline, self-motivation was a big challenge in the beginning. So the only way to
Mhm.
overcome that is
Right.
to exercise things that exercise in a way. And when I say exercise, I don't necessarily mean physical exercise, although that can be part of it, but exercise in a way that it
Sure.
requires discipline to do that thing.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, I would say that when I started training in martial arts in my
Oh,
mid
really?
20s. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I was okay at it, but I also started weight training. You wouldn't tell now by the look of me, but I was pretty serious about weightlifting. And one of the things that I realized in those disciplines is that they required a certain amount of dedication and drive for you to be able to just show
Right.
up and do the exercises, and show up and go through that. Otherwise you don't progress. There's a real physical, tangible example that you get from going through that. Otherwise you
Mhm.
don't get your belt, you don't move on to the next stage, or you're not able to lift that amount of weight if you don't show up and do it. Who are you kidding? So that was something that was really big, deciding factor for me in terms of having some sort of physical discipline. That then related to whatever discipline I
Mhm.
was trying to cultivate within my artistic practice. It was this weird mental shift. It's like, if I can dedicate myself enough to show up to go to the gym on a daily basis and lift weights for a couple hours a day, then what else can I do? So
Oh,
that was
wow.
a really,
Yeah.
really important thing for me to overcome um, those challenges. So what I've found now is, as I get older and as I start to progress in my career, those
Mhm.
disciplines are becoming more and more important, and I'm now becoming more and more grateful for those examples and life lessons that I've had to go through to kind of cultivate that discipline, because it does take
Right.
a lot of discipline now to wake up at 4 a.m., show up and
Oh, yeah.
start painting at 5,
Definitely.
and to be able to sustain practice for 12 hours, good hours in the day, and then also do all of the extra business stuff that's required. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm out there just working as hard as I possibly can. And it's not because I feel like I'm addicted to it, but it's not out of a competition type thing or anything like that. But I need to make sure that I've only got a set amount of time here. I'm also very aware of that. So I know that it's going to take discipline, and I know it's going to take a sheer volume of work and hours to achieve what I really want to achieve. So
Right.
I would have to say, going back to your original question, what were my biggest challenges and how do I overcome them? I'd say that's a really big one, is having
Right.
supported discipline. I do want to just insert something else here.
Right.
Um, because one of the challenges that I did face, before I get into this, I'm not saying that I'm in no way or by any means a victim. I don't consider myself that. But like a lot of kids growing up, going through school, I also, went through bullying. Some people do, some people don't. And I was just one of those kids who got
Mhm.
my butt kicked and was
Yeah.
teased and names and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
School was difficult for me. I was a bit different. I was a bit strange. I didn't know how to behave. I was weird. I didn't know how to navigate those social waters at all. So that was something else. It was a huge challenge for me to overcome. And that, of course, whatever you go through in school and whatever you go through in your younger years does tend to carry on into adulthood. It does seem to have something to do with your particular makeup, the type of decisions that you make, and the
Right.
direction you choose to go. When I look back on it now, it's not that I'm grateful for the school bullies. It's not that. But I do recognize that the result of that forced me to go into myself and start to explore what made me tick, and that threw me even more into my creative practice because that was the one thing that I could rely on. That was the one thing when I would draw and paint, I didn't feel lonely. I
Yeah.
didn't feel so bad for not having any friends. My only friend when I was going through high school,
Mhm.
my only friend went to another high school, and so we would only see each other, on weekends and school holidays and stuff. So I would sit there in the lunchroom during lunch. Sorry, I'd sit in the art department. And I'd draw pictures
Mhm.
and that's what I did. I didn't really, in the end, I didn't really talk to anybody, didn't really hang out with anybody. I was just felt kind of isolated. That was a massive challenge to overcome. But the only thing that got me out of that was my art. Um, the reason I wanted to put this in there is because I know whether, I do get some emails about this, but I do know that there's a heck of a lot of people out there that are getting bullied and are getting teased and ridiculed, and life is difficult, and whether that bullying is happening in the home or it's happening at school. Um, my only, and I'm not an expert in this, and I'm certainly not a psychologist or anything, but the only way that I found that I could deal with that, cope with it, and handle it in a constructive way is to focus on what I could control and what I could do. And
Definitely.
there was also comfort in the thought that one day I might be able to prove the bullies wrong, that I wasn't this
Yeah.
piece of crap that they told me I was, that I
Mhm.
was going to be somebody because I was somebody. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was really important. So I focused on my art. That was a massive challenge for me, and that's how I ultimately overcame it. Because there's a certain amount of time where the years just pass, and you end up looking back and you're like, wow, that's actually not my life anymore. Now my life looks completely different, and now I got a
Yeah.
great bunch of friends who are just like me, and paint
Mhm.
pictures and make sculptures and do interesting things. So it's
Right. Yeah.
it's been great. Actually, it's been a great process of kind of coming into that and learning a little bit more about myself through that process. But I'd say, yeah, that was a big challenge for me, and I think I've overcome that.
Okay. All
Probably
right. Well,
probably a little more information than what we were going for in that question.
that's all right. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, look, we got a lot of questions to go through, and as I warned you in the beginning, I am going to talk, Cody. I am going to waffle. So you gotta pull me up if I'm going too long. But what was the next question? Question number 3.
All right. When you hit a plateau or artist block, how do you get through it?
Mm,
Because that I sometimes hit that a few times too.
yeah. Yeah. and I can hear the mountain lions in the background. The mountain lions also are going, yes, artist block. We want to know. That's so cool that you got mountain lions. I just love that. Um, you know,
Yep.
the way that I've suffered with this big time. The way that I've gotten around it, it's taken on many forms, but it kind of goes back to that thing that I was talking about just a little bit earlier, and um, kind of practicing, you know, things that require discipline in a way that
Right.
you'd be able to take that discipline that you've gained and apply it to something else. Discipline has certainly helped me through artist blocks. Now I get to the point where if I feel an artist block, I don't pay any attention to it. I just get on with it and do it anyway. And
Wow.
there's a lot of people out there that'll be like, well, yeah, but what if you don't know what to paint? If you're just staring at the blank canvas.
Yeah.
So let me just assume that that's not really a problem that I've suffered with, because my problem, and this is a problem with a lot of the people that I talk to, you know, other professional artists, is,
Mm.
you know, we are painfully aware that there is an abundance of ideas and a total lack of time. I have more ideas than I have time to execute on those ideas. And that's
Yeah.
what gets me. That's the opposite of an artist block. I'm rushing around like there isn't enough life to live. You know, there isn't enough hours in the day. I've got no time to waste because there's so much I want to do. So that was a
Mm.
big thing for me, is just recognizing that the sheer volume of work that I have to do, it kind of pulls me out of that funk. Um,
Mhm.
but you know, it's not to say, you know, early on I did suffer with a little bit of that, of a little bit of indecisiveness and kind of not knowing where to start. So let's say you're an artist, and I know that you go personally, Cody. I mean, I know that you go through your bouts of what you call artist block, but I do see other people that I get emailed, you know, emails from these people where they'll not know how to approach canvas. I won't know what am I going to paint. There's so many different things to paint. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Um, my first recommendation would be, who are your heroes? What did they paint, and what do you like about them? And then the answer might be, well, I don't know who my heroes are because I don't have any. Well, then you need to go and get some heroes. And by heroes,
Okay.
my heroes are, and you know, online with things like, you know, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube
Mm.
and Pinterest. Pinterest is a great one. Even Google or Bing, these are great
Yeah.
platforms to be able to search and find inspiration. But let's say, you know, one of my favorites, you know, a few years ago was Pinterest, and I had a board that I had on my Pinterest page, you know, called Painting Heroes, where I would just scour Pinterest for old masters, and I would just start saving them to this board. And I had everything on there, from like drawings and etchings to figures to portraits to landscapes to animals, a few
Wow.
handful of living artists, but most of them were artists from the past, like um, you know, the Victorian school,
Yeah.
Australian Impressionism, Russian Impressionism, the Romantic painters, the Pre-Raphaelites, the Hudson River School, and so I would look at these, and I would suddenly feel this amazing wave of kind of inspiration. I'd be like, wow, these guys saw magnificent landscapes, and they went out there and they painted these magnificent landscapes. They got around magnificent creatures, and they drew and they painted magnificent creatures. So I think that if you're feeling like you're in a situation where you're not sure where to start there and look at what artists from the past did. You know, one of the things that I'd do is I'd look at these painters from the past, and I'd just be totally overwhelmed with what they could achieve. But I
Mm.
knew that if I wanted to be great, and like these painters in my mind were great, then I would have to do things that they were doing. So
Yeah.
if they painted magnificent landscapes, then I needed to paint magnificent landscapes. There was no way around it. So if I hadn't seen anything and my reference material was a bit lacking, then I would
Mhm.
need to go and take some trips to go and see something magnificent. And then
Right.
I can almost hear the question is, oh, well, okay, well, what if I don't have any access to magnificent? What if I don't have any access to something that didn't look like an amazing landscape, like, like let's say the Great Ocean Road behind me, that painting hanging there.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a spectacular, piece of seascape, on the Great Ocean Road in Victoria. That's an amazing coastline, and I've that's inspired a lot of paintings from me, and a lot of paintings from my heroes. It's an
Sure.
incredible place to go and find inspiration. But what if you don't have any access to that? So my next thinking would be, well, look at somebody like a fantastic still life artist. Like let's take a Dutch still life artist like a Calf or a Deheem, and Google those
Okay.
names. Calf, Kalf. I think it's Willem Calf or Decaf or something. Don't quote me on that. Go and do your research, folks. Google that one. But this guy would paint beautiful still lives of just flowers and various objects lit in a particular fashion. And so he would look at the magnificence of this
Mm.
just observing this thing that was in front of him. Was just sometimes they're incredibly intricate, but it doesn't have to be complicated. You can even just take something simple, get a glass of water and put a rose in it, and really look at it. Get a light, shine the light on there, learn how light affects form and what it does to color, and learn how to make that thing a three-dimensional form in a two-dimensional space. To
Mm.
me, that's just as much of an adventure as climbing a mountain and finding this exquisite landscape. You can get your brain to do that, to go, I could be obsessed by this simple thing and paint this simple thing,
Hmm.
and just as much as I could a landscape or a figure or a portrait. So I think starting from a place of just draw inspiration from what's around you. Just pick something, pick anything, throw yourself into it. I think what often happens is we get into this position where we're second guessing ourselves so much rather than just going for something. We just
Hmm.
we'll be waiting to find that perfect idea or that perfect composition or that perfect painting.
Sure.
Stop waiting until you find the perfect thing. You're never going to be ready. You're never going to be in a position where you're ready for that, or you find the ultimate scene or the ultimate subject. It's not going to happen. You'll
Right.
gradually build up to a point where you put together a respectful body of work. But for me, I don't realize those high points until I've already passed them. And I'll look back and go, actually, that was a really good painting that I did back there. The next three were kind of all right, missed the mark, but there's a few works in my past that really stand out. I don't know until I've already gone way past them, and I just keep going. So I'm not on this in the search for something that is going to blow me away right there. I'm looking for something that I could just find a little shred of inspiration and just
Sure.
explore that. So
Awesome.
so to go back to the start of that of the question, what do I do when I have a block or I hit a plateau? Now I just bust through it. I just keep going. So often, I mean, a lot of people will say, I have to be in the mood to paint. I need to be in a position where I feel like I'm just in the mood to paint. I never have to search for that mood to paint. That whole notion confuses me, and it doesn't mean that I don't get burned out. I do sometimes. I'm a human being. I do sometimes hit the point where I'm like, I need to take a drive. I need to take a day. I need to just go and see something else other than the canvas and oil paint and brushes right now. So that does happen, but that's the different than hitting a plateau or a block. That's just overdoing it. But I think that the most important thing is for me now is it any kind of feeling of resistance before I start. I just start. And in about 20, 30 minutes, I didn't even remember that I was feeling that feeling of resistance before I even started. I was just like, no, no, it's now suddenly, now that I've forced myself to do it for that 20 or 30 minute period, now suddenly I'm
Yeah.
in the zone, I'm in the mood. So just get started, just throw yourself into something, and you'll find that,
All right.
maybe it'll take you 2 hours. But if you get a solid 8 hour day of painting or a 6 hour day of painting, then you might have had 2 hours where you struggled through, and then 4 hours were great. And you'd be like, I'm glad that I forced myself to do that. You'll break through it. You'll
Wow.
realize that you have the ability to bust through it.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, a few days ago, that's exactly what happened. I hit a pretty big plateau. few days ago.
Mm,
Like
mm.
I couldn't do anything. I didn't really think of to push myself like that because it didn't even occur to me. I mean, it might sound a little silly, but I just woke up that morning and said, I'm not feeling it. So I didn't paint. But that mentality is really, really encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I want to also just throw something else out there that does help me. That helps me with the discipline. Routine for me is very important, and I find that
Oh
if
yeah.
I'm out of routine or if I'm out of sync in some way, my work suffers. I suffer. I need to make sure that I get plenty of sleep, enough sleep. I don't not excessive amount of sleep, but for me, 6.5 hours is good. I'm good. I'm raring to go. I need
Yeah.
to make sure that I eat right. I watch what I eat very carefully. A lot of people might even
Definitely.
would probably consider me a bit of a health freak or a bit crazy with what kind of
Me too.
stuff that I eat. But I mean, look, man, I mean, I know you guys are very healthy over there in Colorado. We try to do the best we
Yeah.
can over here in the South Island of New Zealand. But I watch what I eat. I avoid, sugar and a lot of things that will cause me to have a crash, have a physical crash.
Oh
Because
yeah.
if you're physically not feeling good, it's very difficult to mentally feel prepared to throw yourself into something creative. So I have to
Right.
take care of you know, I have to take care of my physical being in order to be in a
Oh yeah.
mental state to
Def-
face something challenging like painting. So I just want to throw that in there. Um, that
Definitely.
also has helped me with blocks and plateaus. One other thing, though, I mean, we're talking about we're talking before a little bit about discipline. Allow me to just insert something here, Cody, because
Okay. Sure.
one of the things that I used to do, a lot of weightlifting, as I mentioned. Now I've gone the other way, so I'm now doing more kind of endurance type exercise. So a lot of running now, and that's
Yeah.
something that is, I found very difficult, still find very difficult to do. But that mentally helps me because there's a point where your body starts going, yeah, we're good, we're done running now, the legs hurt, the feet are sore. And to me, that's almost a bit of a plateau. So I just keep running.
Oh,
I'll set myself challenges and then I'll try to exceed that challenge. Again, that forms a
mhm.
very physical, tangible metaphor that I carry into the studio. It really helps me paint.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do the same thing, and man, it works. Works
Mm,
great.
absolutely. Absolutely. Exercise, nothing like it. So
Yep.
let's get on to question number 4.
All right. If your current self could give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
Oh wow. Um,
Uh,
work harder. Work smarter. Um, quit pretending and acting like you know everything. Shut up and listen. Everybody is your senior or your teacher or your
mhm.
mentor in some way. Doesn't matter how old they are, doesn't matter what they do. There's something that you can learn from everybody. So
Right.
just take it on yourself to pay attention and try and absorb as much information as you can.
Right.
But after I've given myself, if I had the opportunity to sit down with my younger self, after I've given myself that very you know curt, abrupt, um, almost aggressive, uh, you know, critique, I would
Yeah.
then turn around and say, you are on the right track. Keep going. Don't worry so much. don't
Right.
don't feed into the negativity. Turn off the news. Just turn off the news. There's so much going on nowadays that can really affect our psychology and our mental state. One of those things that I found until quite recently, actually, it's only been the last year that I've really made. And so let's consider myself a year ago, my younger self as well. I would say, just quit wasting your time with the news. And if you're supposed to know and you're meant to know, you'll find out. Somebody's going to tell you. listen, there's a big meteor coming and you've only got 24 hours. You're going to find out. There's nothing going on there that you really need to concern yourself with if it's going to affect you in a very negative way. I was one of those people that would hear something on the news, it would ruin my week. And so that was something that I had to kind of learn, that I didn't paint when I was stressed out. I didn't paint well. I painted well when I would feed my mind with things that lifted me up, empowered me, educated me, inspired me in some way. So now I listen to, audiobooks. So I would have given my younger self, uh, I would have introduced to my younger self books by Dr. John DeMartini, Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, Brian Tracy,
Yeah,
E.T., the hip hop preacher. I would have thrown these names at my younger self and said, just turn off the television, turn off the news, listen to this stuff while you paint, and see if that makes a difference to how you feel and what you're able to do with your business. And
absolutely.
then I would have probably given myself some more educational books, not just to do with business mindset, motivation, and all that sort of thing. I would have given myself some motivational, educational books that would have to do with art history, history in general, ancient history, things that I was really interested in. So just to feed my mind a little bit more. The other thing that I would tell myself is ditch your friends. Get rid of your
Mm,
friends. Like the friends that are deadbeat dropkicks. The ones that do not boost you up, but they pull you down. The ones where you're giving more energy than you're receiving. Some people are unfortunately, people are leeches. Some are. I'm not saying ditch all your friends. I'm not saying get rid of the good ones. But I mean,
mm,
if I was telling my younger self this, I'd be like, there's names in particular. I won't mention them, but there are names in particular that I would have gone. You need to stop hanging out with these people yesterday, and you need to hang around
yeah,
this person more because this person's better for you. This person, make sure that you're accountable. Make sure that you're responsible. Make sure that you live up to that person who you said you were. And these other people, they'll tolerate your BS. Your good friends. Your good friends won't put up with much out of you for very long. They're your real friends. Your deadbeat dropkick friends want you to be a deadbeat and a dropkick just like them. So they'll tolerate any amount of BS that you have to dish out. And you know who they are. I mean, and so the friends that I have now are friends that are driven, inspired, and committed to their creative practice. And they
mhm,
encourage me and inspire me to show up even more with what I have to do. I hang
right,
around with people that aren't necessarily just like me. I mean, they're doing their own thing. They're their own people. They've got something different to add to the conversation. They're very, very interesting people. But there's no way that I would have had the opportunity to even hang around with people like that if I didn't, have some sort of strength and resolve within myself to be true to who I was and hang around people that I really deserved, you know. So raise your standards. That's something that I learned by listening to Tony Robbins audiobooks. Was one of the things that he said that still sticks with me to this day is, you want to change your life, you got to raise your standards. And so
right.
I did that, and literally life changed overnight. I raised my standards and I was just like, you know what? I can't hang around you anymore because you're a loser. Sorry. And I haven't spoken to that particular person in over 12 years. It's been a long time.
Well, and just earlier, we were kind of just a minute ago, we were talking about podcasts and audiobooks,
Yeah.
and I was kind of curious about that.
Mhm.
I just thought of this. I was curious of what kind of podcasts and audiobooks, because I hear you listen to the Art of Manliness podcast,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was curious what others do you listen to? I'm curious about that.
Well,
Just
I wasn't a regular listener to the Art of Manliness. The last episode that I caught was last year, where there was a gentleman that was being interviewed who was talking about the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And we'll recognize that hero's journey in movies like Star Wars, you know, with the story of Luke Skywalker, or Avatar. Excuse me. You know it, yeah, like you'll know it
Right.
from our literature and movies, television, even video games. Like, we're obsessed with that story of the hero's journey, which is essentially
Yeah.
this story of somebody kind of overcoming a challenge and becoming better as a result of going through this challenge. They start off from zero, they end up at hero. um, so I enjoyed that very
Right.
much. I enjoy some of the episodes on that podcast. I do listen to Joe Rogan's podcast quite a lot. I think that
Yeah.
he interviews some
Yeah.
very interesting people. One of my
Definitely.
favorite guests that he has is a guy named Jordan Peterson. And just to kind of segue from there, Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, is one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. I've listened to it now twice. I'm about to listen to it a third time just when we put up our conversation here, because that is just such sage advice for anybody. I think it's particularly relevant to artists or anybody creative. There's a whole lot of things in there that have to do with the discipline, and taking a really good hard look at yourself.
Definitely.
It's really and it's something that I quite enjoy. So I do listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. Um,
Me too.
there's Gary V's podcast, Ask Gary V. It's a great show, but mainly I'd have to say mainly it's audiobooks, Cody, to be honest. Um, so the audiobooks, I just finished an audiobook called The E-Myth. I think on Audible you can find it as The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
Mhm.
Fantastic book about small business. I think it's important for any artist out there that wants to go into business for themselves. If you think you're going to get by just painting pictures and drawing stuff and sculpting stuff and just selling your work, look, it might happen. You might be that one in a million that is able to do that without knowing anything about business, without knowing how to market yourself, how to diversify, how to, you know, just how to manage yourself, your daily tasks, all of that sort of thing. There's a heck of a lot that goes with running a small business that without that extra information and education, I'd really hate to think where I'd be. So I really enjoyed that one, E-Myth Revisited. And then Grant Cardone is fantastic. I mean, he's a lot of fun to listen to. When he's reading his audiobooks, man, he gets into it and he breaks from the story. He's a lot like Gary Vee in a way. He breaks from the script in his book that I just listened to called Crushing It. He'll break from his script and then he'll talk to you directly and then he'll jump back into the book. He's a really motivating guy, very energetic, very funny. Grant Cardone as well, very energetic guy, but a lot of fantastic advice and a lot of great takeaways there for artists. Um,
Right.
so some of it maybe doesn't apply. I mean, a lot of it, some of it has to do with real estate investing. But there's one book there, how to keep and stay motivated, or how to stay and keep motivated, or something like that. But you can find that book by Grant Cardone on Audible as well. Tony
All right.
Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within, Unlimited Power, some of his earlier books. I had those as physical books. They were great.
Mhm.
But there's one book, and shout out to Dr. DeMartini. I did interview Dr. DeMartini for this podcast, so people will be able to find that episode. But
All right.
Dr. DeMartini wrote a book called How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven. So a bit of a curious title there, but a very interesting book. And I felt that there were a lot of lessons there for artists and creative people. And it broke a lot of myths for me that had to do with money. Because if there was one hang up that I really had, it was about money and wealth. Because I felt that I didn't deserve any, so I didn't have any. And I felt that it was important for an artist to starve and be that passionate, starving artist and fight in the fight, man. And you don't understand my struggles. And that was something that I'm glad I got rid of that. I kicked that to the curb, and I'm glad I did too, because now it's completely turned around since I changed my thinking. So, Dr. DeMartini, How to Make One Hell of a Profit, Still Get to Heaven. I don't know that he has that as an audiobook, But I
Right.
did. You can find that off his website, and you can find that as a physical book. People
All
will
right.
know Dr. DeMartini though from a little book called The Secret. It was interesting. DeMartini, I mean, he's probably you probably find something online where he's talking about that, but he's a very interesting guy. They interviewed him for something like 7.5 hours for that film, The Secret. They interviewed him for the film, and they only ended up putting in a few minutes. But
Wow.
he had this whole philosophy, and it's very interesting. So he does cover it a lot in his books. So I find him a very interesting guy, and I like a lot of that stuff. So
Awesome. And when you said you listen to Joe Rogan podcast and Jordan Peterson, I just thought I listened. Have you heard his Joe Rogan's last podcast with Jordan Peterson?
I was just listening to it before we picked up the call this morning. Yes.
I was listening to that one today when I was painting.
Yeah. Cool. 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 Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Next question. You
Let's
ready?
get on with it. Yep. Let's go.
All right. Let's see here. How do you market yourself to art buyers, and who's your target market?
Fantastic. Good question. How do I market myself to my target buyers? You know, it's that was a struggle early on, because the market has changed for me as I've changed and as my career's kind of developed. When I
Right.
first started out, and I had my first exhibition back in 2002, I was 19
That was your
years
first.
old. Yeah, so that was my first
Your first
exhibition.
exhibition when you were 19.
That's correct. Yeah, my first exhibition.
Um,
So I wasn't
now,
wasn't professional at that stage, but I it was my first show. So I
and
was still in university. A solo exhibition is a heck of an undertaking. I mean, to put together a body of work, requires a
right.
lot, and it takes a lot out of you to put together something and sit on that body of work and then release it. That's a real challenge. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
about to have. Go on.
no, you're gonna have an exhibition coming up soon.
Yeah, actually, in December of 2019 is my is the plan.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's great news, Cody. I mean, look, and I know people will see by the paintings that are behind you. And can we put in a link to your website so people can see more of your work as well?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to throw something out there for anybody listening to this, and I'm not just saying this, like, because I know you well, Cody. We've been talking, as I mentioned earlier, for the last couple of years at least,
Hmm.
and I really believe that you are going places. I mean, the amount of time that you dedicate, and just your sheer level of skill at the age you are now. I mean, what are you? You're 14 now, right?
Yes,
I
correct.
mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, just looking at that bison painting behind you, I mean, the perspective is on point. The sense of subtle gradation of light from the shade in that hill in the background to getting brighter as it comes into the foreground. I mean, your work
Yeah,
is just phenomenal. It blows me away. So, I mean, my
thank you.
advice for anybody, if you want to invest in art, invest in this kid, because I might even have to get a painting, because the thing is that you're going to be going places, and you're going to end up being a big name. I really believe that. Now, I don't feel I'm just boosting you up, because as I said, I've been talking to you for the last couple of years, but I see and I know
Mhm.
what you're capable of, and I also see the improvement, and just how serious you are about this. So, you know, guys, if you're listening, just check out Cody's work, check out his website, and maybe send him a message, and let him know what you think of his paintings. I think you'll be just as impressed as I am. So, Cody,
I
well done.
appreciate
Like, I'm really, I'm gonna watch this body of work for your exhibition. I'm gonna watch that develop with interest, because I think whenever you put together a body of work, like a group of paintings, working on
Yeah.
across that many paintings at once, like you could start to develop themes and ideas. I wish I could be there. That'd be phenomenal to see that, so that's cool. But like, we're talking about marketing, and how to reach my target market. So when I was starting out, and I had my first show, my market consisted of my friends and family, and that was it. Like it was the people that I physically knew that I could reach with an invitation, put it in their hand and say, "Hey dad, you're invited to my show." you know, and then it would be his colleagues and friends, from his zoo days. And then from there, a few people that went to university with me. But there was another thing that I kind of stumbled upon for that show, and I thought that what I really want is I want some wealthy collectors. So I held my exhibition in a
Right.
wealthy area at a community center, or a cultural center. And it was it was actually an old asylum back in the day, but it had since been
Wow.
converted to this beautiful heritage cultural center, in a little
Wow.
suburb called Applecross in Perth. And that
Hmm.
area around Applecross was a really affluent area. And you just looking at the size of the houses, it just blew me away. I'm like, how do people have that much money? I have no idea. So
Right.
I thought that wouldn't it be a great idea to print out as many invites as I possibly could. I had a big brick of invites, like probably bricks of them, and they were bright blue. And it was my exhibition. There's no pictures on it or anything. It was very simple. It just said my exhibition was called High Tide. It was all seascapes. And I said, come to my exhibition, High Tide. It's going to be held here. Here's the date. I'm Andrew. I'm just starting out, blah, blah, blah. So I would have handed out, it would have been hundreds, over 500 of those things. And at
Wow.
opening night, I ended up getting at opening night about 100 to 150 people at the opening
Oh,
for my
wow.
first show. It was great.
That's pretty good.
And I nearly sold all my paintings, except for a handful of abstracts that I decided to include from my university portfolio. But apart from that, all the seascapes sold. It was a fantastic show. And it was a
Wow.
great way to start. So then I stumbled upon something. I thought, well, there's physical work that I could do to actually reach those people that are part of my target market. So identifying where they are, where they live, maybe where they work, where they play,
Mhm.
sailing clubs, golf clubs, tennis clubs, where they go on holiday. I could do an artist residency in these places. Um,
Right. Sure.
that's how I started reaching my target market. One of the other strategies that I did employ throughout the kind of middle years of my career was, working with galleries. So I'd work with galleries, and that went okay for me for a time. But there were a couple of issues with the gallery model that I didn't like, and it became
Mhm.
very difficult for me to reach my market because I
Yeah.
wasn't the one reaching my market. I had a middleman that was reaching the market. Sure, I was paying them for their service. They were selling the work. They had the client list, but I wanted to know who those people were. I didn't feel like I was reaching them. They bought my paintings, but I didn't feel like I knew who was ending up with the work. I've opted in recent years to work with galleries less and less, and now I don't work with any galleries at all. Um,
Wow.
and so now I'm just representing myself. So the way that I market myself now, I mean, I've already built up a client list, and I work with people on an individual basis. I have a
Mhm.
website. I try to keep my website up to date. I accumulate names and email addresses, of the people that buy my paintings, and I make sure that I get in touch with them when I have something available, or I stay in contact with them to make sure that I'm in their mind and in their consciousness from time to
Mhm.
time. So that's one of the ways that I do it. But now, I've reached a point in my career where now I'm having people coming to me, and there's a phenomenon that's happened, which I recognized also early on, is that the customers that you have are your most important customers. Those are the people that are actually going to end up buying your paintings again and again and again.
Right.
So it makes up about 80%. It's almost that classic 80-20 rule, but I've run the numbers of this within my own business. 80% of my sales come from people who already own a painting, and 20% come from people that are brand new, that my marketing strategies have been able to reach them.
Mhm.
And again, my marketing strategies now have consisted of me physically going to locations where people will come face to face with me. seeing me actually paint a picture and being like, oh, wow, I want one of those. So I will
Right.
do artist residencies. One of my favorite things to do is, and I've done this gig a few times, but I've been artist in residence aboard a particular ship where people are residents on board and they don't necessarily go for a cruise, but they actually live on this ship. It's an
Wow.
extraordinary situation. But
Wow.
I've been very lucky to be able to have that opportunity to work on board. And a lot of these people not only became, friends, but also became clients, and they started buying portraits and landscapes and various pieces. So that's been extraordinary. And then through that, the friends of their friends, end up becoming clients and collectors. So it just kind of spreads on a grassroots level. I can only paint about 25 paintings a year at the most. So I only have to reach those 25 people. Amongst that, 80% of those people are going to be people that have already bought. So let's wrap that question up in a real tangible way that somebody would actually be able to use in terms of actual practical advice that somebody would be able to use. First of all, get
Sure.
yourself out there. Don't hide behind the easel. Get yourself out there personally and get out there amongst it. Whether you go for the gallery model or not, you're going to need to have some amount of presence physically being there doing your thing so people can see you do your thing. Um,
Definitely.
if you're too shy for that, then find a really good agent, gallery, or representative to represent you and let them handle the marketing side. For me and my personality, that was never a good fit for me. Because
Mm.
I wanted to be the one that was making the contacts, the sales, the one conducting business, and the one shaking their hand and meeting these people, because these people mean so much to me. Like, I love them. Like, I literally have love and affection for them, because by them buying that painting, they're allowing me to live my life and keep painting. That means a lot, man. Like, that means a hell of a lot. The gift that they're giving,
Right.
the opportunity that they're giving me, it's not lost on me. I'm so deeply appreciative of them that I want to know who they are, look them in the eye, shake their hand, sometimes even give them a great big hug and say, thank you so much, you know. But that was so important. So I didn't get that with the gallery model, because the gallery model needs to maintain its position between, you as the artist and the client. But if you're too shy, then yeah, find a good gallery that is going to believe in you, believe in your product, and will take your product and run with it. But even getting into galleries, that's a probably subject for a whole nother podcast. But the one thing I'll say about getting into galleries just briefly is, if you're going to get into a gallery, or you find yourself like I was early in my career getting rejected from a lot of galleries, pay attention to that feedback. I was actually rejected from every single gallery that I applied to, and when I first started out, every one of them sent me packing. Nobody took me on. No one. I didn't get my
Wow.
lucky break until I had my tail between my legs. I went back into the studio and I started working on the things that they told me. Some of them were just downright mean.
Wow.
And it took me a little while to build my confidence up again, to the point where I was like, you know what? I do have something here. I know I have something here, but I need to work on this. I need to practice this. Look, you might find
Mm.
that you go through rejection. Rejection is part of the process. Don't let it get you down. If you can look up, you can get up. So just get to
Sure.
work, get up, get to work, and just work on the quality of your work. I think that sheer quality wins in the end. If you're able to create a quality product, quality materials do help, but I mean quality of execution. You know, are you able to render an animal so it looks like a three-dimensional, beautiful form that has absolute respect and reverence for this gorgeous creature? Are you able to produce a painting that actually communicates that, where people can gain some sort of insight or knowledge about that subject that you painted? I believe you're doing that. And I think, knowing you and watching your progression, your quality is stepping up and up and up. So I think,
Mm.
if you were to go for a gallery that, even if they said, hey, Cody, maybe now's not the right time, you would have something to go back and work on. But I think you're already off to a good start by having that quality there. So anybody listening to this, I think quality is a really important thing. Make sure that your
Definitely.
work is of a high standard. Because also, you got to remember, I don't personally like competition. I don't go for competitions or awards. I won't enter them. I refuse. Um, but there is a certain aspect, if we are to look at the harsh reality of the business side of this, you are competing, in a sense, for for people's attention. And if somebody's got a few $1,000 to spend, are they going to spend that on your painting, or are they going to spend it on somebody else's? And I think
Right.
quality in the end makes a deciding factor.
Right.
So how do I market myself? Okay, being able to put myself out there and actually have a physical presence helps. Nowadays,
Okay.
though, with the internet, this is a really important point to make. So do you mind if I just talk about the online stuff for a second?
Please.
Okay. So nowadays with the internet, with social media, with things like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and our websites, there has
Mm,
never been a better time to be an artist. There's never been a better time to improve your techniques, to learn about business, and there's never been a better time to reach your market. Your
def-
market is on Instagram. Your market is on Facebook. They're out there, man. They're out there. So how are you going to do that? Get yourself an Instagram page, get yourself a Facebook page, get a
okay.
professional Facebook page. Look, don't take it from me. I'm not an expert when it comes to social media. I'm just as green as anybody else starting out. I really do feel like I am a rank beginner when it comes to the digital realm. I really am. I don't understand it,
Mm,
but I make it my business to try and do my very best to understand as much as I can. Um,
absolutely.
I do have help. My gorgeous wife does help me with my social media and maintaining contact with people online. And she does help with my website. We're building a brand new gorgeous website. She's building it. So I do have help. I'm very lucky there. But having an online presence is really important. If you can have an online presence and you can put yourself out there, what it is like a really wide net that you're throwing out over there over a big mass of people, and you're going to draw that net back in, and amongst your catch is going to be one or two of that 25 buyers that you need every year to buy a painting. Well, you're already off and running.
Yep.
Now they became part of the 80% in our 80-20 rule. And those people will probably buy again. They might be able to buy something else that you produce that year. Or they'll have a friend that will buy something, and
Mhm.
they'll know of somebody. That was really important aspect to marketing. That
Right.
having an online presence, putting myself out there. This year, um, actually, no, let's call it the last 3 years have been great in terms of sales of original paintings. But
Right.
this year, I've had my biggest clients come through, my biggest clients that I've ever had, period, come through
This
one
year.
after another. Yes, because one gentleman, his wife wanted to know how to paint. So she looked up how to paint a seascape, and whose video comes up? But yours truly. I love to teach, man. I love to teach. So I try to pour everything I can into those videos. She saw that. She really enjoyed it. But what's more is she lived in the area where that seascape was, depicting. And so this client got in touch with me, and he bought that seascape. And he also bought commissioned another large painting. It's just an example of I put myself out there online, and then these people, will find that, they'll pick up on it, and they'll turn around and go, actually, I really like that. I would like to live with that painting. I'd like to have that hanging on the wall. So have some sort of digital presence. I guess that's the main point. And learn from the experts, learn from the best. Don't take it from me. I'm not an expert when it comes to marketing yourself in a digital way
Mhm.
yet. I plan on mastering it. I do. If I'm serious, I do plan on mastering that. But I'm on my way. It's part of a process. But Gary V, if anybody wants to know, Gary V, if you can kind of
Okay.
grit your way through the profanity, because he does like to drop the odd swear word in there, then he's
Mm,
got a lot to offer. But there's also, I mean, look, just YouTube. Jump on YouTube. How do I run a Facebook ad? How do I set up a Facebook page? How do I? What are 10 hacks for my Instagram page? And you'll get dozens of videos of people giving you information for free. What a
okay.
concept! What a
Yeah.
concept. There's the equivalent of dozens of university degrees sitting at your fingertips right now if you just jump online and start learning. That's it.
All right.
So
Awesome.
that's how I reach a large portion of my target market. for my
Right.
original paintings is through online. One more thing though, Cody. One more thing.
Okay.
When
Go
you get
ahead.
a client, when you get a customer, and you get somebody that has bought something from you, remember they're now part of your 80%. Now you got to take care of them. Now you have to have something to sell them again and again and again. A lot of people have a big problem with selling, especially artists, because our feelings and our emotions are tied up in the physical act of creating this thing. When we part with it and we accept money, there's something about that that cheapens the whole process for us. So a lot of us have deep-seated emotional issues when it comes to selling paintings. I get
Yeah.
that. I had that. One of the things that I got from a book by Grant Cardone called Sell or Be Sold, or there's a seller survival guide as well. Another one is If You're Not First, You're Last. He does cover sales techniques.
Mhm.
You have to be sold on your product first. When you're sold on your product and you know you've got the best product for yourself, like you believe in your product. When I say that, it does sound conceited, but I know that I got a good product. I'm not saying the best in comparison with somebody else out there. I am the best. I mean, the best of what I can do, what I can offer. This is the best I can do. I believe in what I'm doing. I have a responsibility to make sure my client ends up with my painting. I am doing them a favor. Yes, they're doing me a favor. They are
Yeah.
paying me for that painting, but I'm taking care of them. I'm giving them the best possible painting at the best possible price I can afford to give them. So I
Right.
want them to have that. And my paintings don't come back because I get reports from people that live with my paintings. They're like, I love that painting, man. I love that painting. Thank you for doing your thing and keep going. So be sold yourself first. Be sold first, and then it makes selling a lot easier. So it's important once you get your customer, once you get your client, learning how to take care of them and how to sell to them again.
All right. Yeah, I've certainly experienced that.
All right, man. All right, well, you're on your
Okay.
way. All right, let's get through some more questions.
All right. What is your favorite subject to paint and why?
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that because I think for me, it goes back to that thing we were talking about. I have
Mhm.
more ideas, more things that I'm interested in than I have time to paint. So at the moment, I'm painting a great big canyon, a great big gorge in the Kimberley, and looking out,
Mhm.
across this river and, there's big cliffs and rocks. And I'm loving that process. But when I'm done with this, I'm going to paint a portrait. And that at the moment, the painting I'm painting is my favorite subject. But when I start doing that portrait, I know that's going to become my favorite subject. So for
Yeah.
me, with the type of artist that I am and what I love, it's very difficult to put me in a box. And I mean to do that because I'm interested in so much. I love portraiture. I love landscapes. I love seascape. I love still life. I love figures. I love historical genre painting. I love paintings of buildings and street scenes. I love on plein air. Look, man, it's difficult. But I would say that in terms of experiences painting, one of my favorite practices is painting on plein air and studying from life, from direct observation. Because when you're in the presence of a beautiful, magnificent landscape, or even if you're
Right.
painting a portrait of somebody from life, there's a certain switch that gets flipped in your brain. And it's just the most inspiring thing to sit there and just try to decode and decipher how light works, how form works. For me, I'd say it's all tributes to, creation. I'm obsessed with creation, with nature, with people, with human beings, with culture, with all creation in all of its forms. So
Mhm.
anytime I have the opportunity to study that, and that's what I do for a living, is I study that in a visual way. It's just hard not to get eaten up with each and every little painting that I do. So I don't know.
Sure.
Next question. I can't answer that one.
That's all right. That
It's like
puzzle
asking
that.
a painter. It's like asking a painter, what's your favorite color?
Oh yeah, that's a tough choice. Very tough choice.
Blue.
As an artist, as an artist, you don't really have a favorite color.
No,
I mean, you could have your favorite range of colors, but you can't really have your favorite, like your most favorite color.
exactly.
That's hard to decide.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Cody. Yeah, no, it's what you can do. I mean, I don't even think about it. I don't even spare a thought about that. But interesting question, all the same. Okay, what's the next question? Let's get into it.
All right, what? Let's see here. Where were we? What do you do to challenge yourself?
Wow. Okay. A lot. I think life is challenging. Life is hard enough. Life is going to throw enough challenges at you that you're going to have to
Yeah.
overcome, and you're going to have to be prepared for and work out a way to rise to that challenge. Um, but there are things that I do specifically to challenge myself. Um, I
Right.
I came up with a little acronym. I hope this is an original concept, but I it's not like an original acronym or original methodology. It's certainly not an original concept, but so I don't know. But I came up with a
Mhm.
with a little acronym. Um, I'm going to give you the dorky, nerdy version first. The dorky version is it's an acronym, and the acronym is DUB, DUB. So
Mhm.
DUB and dub, I imagine dub as a kind of like an ointment or a medicine that was particularly unpleasant, and it came in a jar, and you take that lid off the dub, you take the dub out, and you'd rub a little dub on your day, and that's what you had to do, is take it as a dose. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
was thinking that sounds really stupid, but I'm not ever going to forget it because it just sounds so dumb. But DUB stands for difficult, unpleasant, and boring. So every day I challenge myself by attempting to do something that is difficult, something that is unpleasant, and something that is boring. And if I'm able to commit myself to a discipline of just throwing myself into one of those three things, or preferably all three of those things every day,
Mhm.
then I know I'm going to be doing something that's going to build that mental muscle, that spiritual muscle to be able to carry me through. I've since come up
Definitely.
with a better acronym for it, and I call it BUD, BUD, or your buds.
But
These are your buds. You got to remember, everybody needs buddies, you know, and these are my buds. And I take my buds everywhere with me. My buds are a bunch of jerks because they're really terrible to be around, but they really help me when I think about it. So just change it around to boring, unpleasant, and difficult. So let's start off with something boring. What's something that I do every day that's boring? Well, one of the things that I do, probably not every day, but no, close to every day, certainly like 5 days a week, I'll do video editing.
yeah,
And
sure.
I find video editing to be a painful task. It is boring. It is terrible. It is awful. Like, I love my subscribers, like I really do. Just like my clients, I'm just so grateful to people that want to listen or seem to value what I have to say. Um,
Right.
so it's by no means disrespect when I say editing a video is boring, because I know that people that I really value and respect are going to be watching that video. But the actual
Right.
process, it's difficult, it's labor intensive, and it's mentally very fatiguing and challenging. I love hitting that upload button, and I love going back and reviewing what I've made, because seeing the whole
Oh, yeah.
thing come together from a mess of video clips into this polished little film to put up on YouTube, that's cool,
Yeah.
man. Like, that's really cool. I enjoy that process, that creative process. But the long, tedious hours spent just kind of watching that clip, making sure the brush hits the canvas at the right, okay, and then cut, and then we're add that in the queue, and then the next bit. Now I got to say this. Oh, I said that too many times. Cut that bit out. Now we got to do the music behind the video, and then adjust the level here and adjust the level there. And I barely even know what I'm doing. Like, I'm a rank amateur. But between Rachel and I, you know, we manage. She does a lot better than me. You know, she'll do a lot of rough cutting to help me with that process. But it's
Sure.
difficult. So that's the bit that I do that's boring. The bit that I do that's unpleasant. Well, there's a few things that I do every day that are unpleasant. One of them is I will wake up at 4 a.m.
Oh yeah.
That's unpleasant. That's not nice.
Yeah.
That's a really terrible thing to do, especially if you're not used to it. In the beginning, it was very difficult. And I must admit, there's a part of me, because I end up getting engrossed in what I'm doing, that I probably stay up a little bit later than I should, so that I end up, when I get up at 4 a.m., I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have stayed at the easel so late, or oh, I shouldn't have been editing that video so late, or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's unpleasant. Waking up at 4 a.m. is unpleasant. But I do it. I
Sure.
commit myself to a practice of doing that. I will
Definitely.
take weekends off, and I will take the odd day off here and there if I feel I need to catch up on some sleep. But for the most
Def-
part, that's a
yeah.
habit that I try to engage in, is just waking up early. Now, make sure, if you're listening to this, make sure you're getting enough sleep. If it helps, seek advice from your healthcare professional, blah, blah, blah. You know when you're pushing it too hard, you know when you're getting
Yeah.
silly with it. But for me, 4 a.m. is good. If I'm in bed at 9, I can wake up at 4. No sweat. I got 7 hours
Yeah.
or 6.5 hours. No sweat. It's fine. I got enough sleep, you know? So that's something that can be unpleasant though, because you're still a bit foggy, dazed, and confused, and have trouble opening your.
Yeah.
The
Sure.
bit that I do that's difficult, as I mentioned earlier, is running, physical exercise. I do things that I
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
physically challenging and difficult. It used to be weightlifting. I felt that I was getting more and more unhealthy lifting the amount of weight that I was, and ingesting the sheer amount of meat that I was eating. So I've since cleaned up my diet and cut out that physical heavy strain, and now I'm doing more endurance type exercises. I love body weight exercise as well. Like I'll do chin ups and push ups and that sort of thing. So love that. Love
Oh yeah.
kettlebells. So I'll do that, but that's difficult. So there's a certain routine that I'll do with kettlebells where I'll be lifting, swinging kettlebells, and I'll do. By the way, Funk Roberts MMA. He'll do kettlebell routines. I got a lot of routines from him. Difficult to
Oh
do.
yeah.
Difficult to do. But if you do it, if you dedicate yourself to a practice of doing this, then
Yep.
it can really
My
be beneficial.
and my kind of I don't want to do it, but I push myself to do 100 push-ups every day. I mean, every once in a while I don't.
My man, all right, all right. That's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get another exercises, but I tend to forget almost because I'm so caught up in what I do. And sometimes I'll catch myself in the middle of painting and I get down on the floor and I'll probably do 10 or something. It's like, oh man, I forgot to do 20 an hour ago. Got to
Yeah,
get that in.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, even though I really don't feel like doing it, or sometimes it does make me feel good. Even
yeah,
just a little exercise
yeah.
can make you feel kind of lift your spirits.
Absolutely. But in terms of doing it difficult as well, like some people might be going, well, what are you going to do if you want to go for a run and it's raining outside or it's cold outside? I go
Mhm.
anyway. Or when it's
Oh
dark,
yeah,
like I just go anyway.
definitely.
So you just do it, and I will put on my running shoes and my sweatpants and my rain jacket, and I'll walk to the door and walk past Rachel, and she'll look at me and she'll say, "Where are you going? It's pouring outside." Say, "I'm going for a run." See ya. I'll be back in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and I'll go and do it. And it's unpleasant while you do it. It's difficult, but when you get back, you end up just feeling just amazing energy and
Oh yeah,
just physical vitality. And this is the thing. It's a physical metaphor. If you can do that, what else can you do? I always say that, like, if I can lift that weight, or if I can run up that hill, or if I can, do this amount of distance, or if I can
right.
wake up at 4 a.m., what else can I do? What else can I do?
Sure.
And what it's meant
Uh,
for me is that I've ended up being able to work incredibly hard and stick at something that where
mhm.
other people might not put in the sheer amount of effort. I said this to myself, and it's by no means original, but I did say this to myself early on, where uh, I know I'm not the best painter out there. I know that. I'm painfully aware of that. And I say painfully because it's not that I want to be the best painter. I just desperately want to be better and better and better.
Hmm.
But one of the things I do know is I'm a damn hard worker,
Sure.
and I will work
Yes.
my butt off. So where other people on a Saturday night are going out partying and they're going out hanging out and drinking and doing all carrying on whatever, you know where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in the easel. I'm going to be painting.
All right. Who do you admire and why?
Wow. I admire a lot of different people, a lot of different people. So I mentioned earlier my art heroes. So people can see on my Pinterest page that I've got art heroes or painting heroes, and they'll find that board. And there's something like 700 odd paintings by various artists. And so from a technical standpoint, people will be able to see my influences there and the people that I admire. I admire them because they were able to do an amazing job with their paintings. But sometimes, my heroes aren't necessarily artists. They're people that, or maybe they're artists that I admire, where people would be like, "Why do you like them? You paint nothing like them." Let me give you an example. I put out a YouTube video about a year ago called "Getting Unstuck," and I think that was a video that I dedicated to a chap named Sebastian. He was he's a fantastic painter. He's from Argentina, and in this video to Sebastian, I think that's a video where I was talking about my heroes. Um,
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it was that one. Pretty sure. People could pull me up if it was a different one. But I mentioned a painter called Thomas Kincaid, and I got a heck of a lot of flack for that. People are like, "Why are you interested in Thomas Kincaid? Why would you go for an artist like that?" Um, and a little bit harsh in a way, because I was thinking, well, hang on, maybe they didn't listen to what I said. And I just want to take this opportunity to kind of answer your question, but also clarify something and just try and drive
Mhm.
home a point that I was trying to make. And I probably didn't make it in a coherent way. Um, I admire people that are able to make something work that is difficult to do. I think if you can make it as an artist, employ yourself,
Mhm.
so you've got your own paycheck sorted. You're not relying on
Right.
another source of income, and employ teams of people to help you realize your vision. You're doing something right. And though he might
Right.
have died too young, that guy died with millions and millions of dollars in the bank. Now, there's a few
Mhm.
people saying that, well, yeah, but Andrew, money isn't everything. Okay, I know money's not everything, but it is a
Yeah.
particular measure of success. And I think that there is a lot of us out there who do want some measure of financial success. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I looked at this guy going, here's a painter. I personally don't like his work. I don't, but that's not the point. He's a hero of mine because he was able to kick some massive goals with his career. He was
Right.
thrashing it. Like original paintings ended up selling for tens of thousands of dollars, probably hundreds of thousands in the end there. Certainly now after
Wow.
they passed away. But there was a point in time where Thomas Kincaid was the single most collected artist in US history. More
Wow.
American homes had either a print, a calendar, or something with his image on there than any other artist. He was
Wow.
able to market himself and put himself out there to a mass of people and capture the consciousness of a generation. Now, again, I don't like the way he did things from a technical standpoint, but that is not the point. This guy was a marketing genius. He put himself out there and was able to share his art, his love, and his passion with millions of people, and he made himself fabulously rich doing so. So, my
Right.
heroes are people that are able to demonstrate that they're able to demonstrate a level of expertise and skill, not only when it comes to painting, but when it comes to conducting themselves in business and in life. So I admire a lot of people for what they were able to do, not just in front of the easel, but with their career as a whole. And I
Right.
know that Thomas Kincaid went through his challenges later in his life before his passing. I'm not judging the guy on those criteria at all. I mean, who am I to judge? But I do admire the guy for what he was able to do for business. So he's definitely up there as a hero of mine. Another hero of mine, let's take another hero of mine for a different aspect altogether.
Right.
Robert Bateman.
Oh yeah.
Robert Bateman is a living legend. What that guy has done with spreading the message of the plight of the wild, the environment, the spreading his message and just sharing his passion and his love for nature.
Oh yeah.
What he's done socially for the issues that he's passionate about, whether you agree with it or not, he has been
Mhm.
very, very successful in getting his message out there. And you've got to admire that. You've got to respect that. So,
Oh
my
yeah.
heroes are people, I try to kind of look at them and go, what do I admire about them? What do I respect about them? And can I isolate that quality? And
Mhm.
can I identify clearly what that is? And then the next part to it is, can I model that in some way? Can I do something similar to what those people have done? So, can I
Right.
learn about business in the way that Thomas Kincaid learned about business? Maybe I don't want my work to take that form. That's okay. But can I do something there to make sure more people know about my paintings and my images? At least it gets you
Sure.
thinking about that. Can I say something about a particular issue or share a particular message where I could get people talking about that, like Robert Bateman had people talking about the environment? Could I do that?
Yeah.
So my heroes take many, many forms. Those are just a couple of examples. But painting heroes, again, Carl Rungus, love him.
That,
Bierstadt, Moran. There's so many names that I just couldn't even think, how I could get to all of those names. Check out my Pinterest board. If you're listening to this, you'll find a few of those from a technical standpoint, people that I really admire. But
okay.
I have heroes as well that aren't artists. Heroes that aren't artists. Um,
Mm.
I would say, Jordan Peterson is a real hero of mine. He's a real mentor.
Yeah.
Um, I really enjoy somebody like E.T., the hip hop preacher. He's a real hero of mine. People that overcome some sort of adversity or challenge or massive amount of scrutiny, and they keep chipping away, they keep plugging away, and they share their message and they share what they're passionate about. And they don't let up.
Okay.
Those are people that become heroes of mine.
Wow. That's very interesting.
So I hope that answers it. What's our last question? We got a last question?
Yeah, we got one more question, and I really appreciate what we just talked about. Talking about stuff like that kind of always kind of uplifts me a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Look, man, I mean, look, it's important to know. I'm a big believer. We're all in this together. None of us are
Oh yeah.
really going it alone. We're all in this together. And I think whenever we have that opportunity to reach out or take something as well that is being offered by great minds, great thinkers, great achievers, there's such a wealth of information and material out there. Feed your mind, your psychology, your consciousness with something that is going to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah. Right.
It's really important. Really important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, Cody, we got one more question.
Yep. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy.
Really?
Yeah. So Elon Musk listens to this podcast. It's his favorite show when it comes to art. And so in 5 to 10 years, probably in about 7.5 years, I'm going to be on plein air painting on Mars. That's where I see myself. So yeah, first on plein air
Mars.
painter on Mars. Yep, absolutely,
You
absolutely.
serious?
Yes and
I
no. Yes and no.
can't.
I I I love this because I set goals and I write my goals down and I read my goals every
Yeah,
day. Thank goodness you can't read those, but those right there, those pieces of paper, those are my
mm-hmm.
goals right there. Those are my goals, and that's a list of stuff that I got to do that's going to help me achieve those goals. So those are my personal goals. Those are my business
Wow.
goals. Now that's just for this year. In a box or a file somewhere here, no, probably in that stack right there, are my list of goals for the next 5 to 10 years. So
Wow.
I write down my goals I read my goals, my year goals every day, my 5 to 10 years. I probably don't read them as often as I should. I'm need to
Mhm.
start, and I would encourage everybody, because I've just finished this audiobook just before listening to the E-Myth. Finished an audiobook by Grant Cardone where he will actually physically write his goals every morning and then write his goals every evening. I love that. I'm going to start doing that. As you
Wow.
can see there, that's a full page. That's a lot of goals right there. There's got to be at least 36, 45, something like that, goals on that piece of paper. So to write all that down by hand will take a little while. So I might condense it into like my top goals. What does that do? It feeds my psychology. It boosts me up. It inspires me to go and achieve what I have to go and achieve. Um,
Sure.
I've said to myself, that, and again, being encouraged and inspired by the authors of the people that I listen to, I've tried to set goals that were ambitious, that were reaching for, shooting for the stars. And one of the things I heard DeMartini say that I loved was, I'd prefer to shoot for the stars and hit a planet than never leave Earth's orbit. I just love that, because to me, it tells
Wow.
me that you've got to shoot for the stars. Who cares that it's ambitious? You'll hear people say, "Hey, be realistic." The only person who's going to know if you're being realistic or not is you.
Right.
It's the only person. That's the only person.
Right.
Let's just say, I did throw that out there. I'm going to be the first on plane air painter on Mars. Okay, well, let's say that's true. Why the hell not?
Mm.
Why the hell not? Why wouldn't those astronauts need some artistic entertainment? And why couldn't I be in a position to get on that shuttle and volunteer and say, "Hey, I'll go." They'll have to take my wife too. That's a given, and
Mhm.
my dogs and my cat. But it can be done. Why not? I'll be a stowaway. I'll smuggle myself on board. I'll get on that rocket ship. I'll go. But let's say that doesn't happen. Well, it's a fun kind of tongue in cheek goal for myself. But what does that remind me to do? It reminds me to be more ambitious, to kind of reach and strive. And do I want to go on Mars? I would only want to go to Mars if there was a guarantee that I'd be able to come back. And so we might
Okay.
be able to do that in my lifetime. Maybe. I hope so. So that'd be really cool. And it'd be especially awesome if I was the first plein air painter on Mars. I think that'd be fantastic. But
That would be.
let's say that it doesn't happen. Okay, no worries. Well, let me give you an example of some other goals that maybe aren't so outlandish. Um, One of my goals was to set foot into some pretty extreme environments around the planet.
Mm.
I've made up a list of countries that I really would like to go to. So I have
Mm.
goals that are, I would like to paint in Patagonia. I'd like to paint in Africa. I want to see Antarctica. I wanted to go to see Alaska. I ticked that off my list. I went to Alaska. That was cool. I got to see that last year. That was awesome. And I'll be having an episode of The Great Art Adventure coming out just as soon as I can edit it together and create the work that the episode needs to go with. People don't actually realize the lead time to make these free videos on YouTube sometimes can be
Sure.
pretty intense, pretty great. So
Mhm.
uh, I've got lists of goals of places I want to be. So in 5 to 10 years time, I hopefully would have seen that I've been able to travel to more and more exotic locations and see more and more of this amazing planet that we live on, and meet more and more people, and come face to face with more interesting and diverse cultures and paint their portraits. And that's something that I just see as insanely cool. So
Oh yeah,
5 to 10 years, let's say in the next 5 years, what's on the doorstep for me is you will probably no doubt see, hopefully it happens this year, but you'll see me open my very first gallery where I'm going to be running my own gallery.
your own.
That's right. That's right.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
I'm going to be buying my own building and I'm going to be running my own gallery. So that's next in the next 5 to 10 years. I would like to reach more people online and teach more people how to paint,
Alright.
and share painting and creativity and the joy of just learning this amazing medium. Just share that with the world. So in the next
Right.
5 to 10 years, I just want to keep hitting that as hard as I can, and just share videos for free on YouTube with people, and have tutorials that are available for people to learn how to paint. That's something that I want to do more and more of. And
Yeah.
I'd also like
Yeah.
to, I'd like to have an exhibition that travels the world. That'd be something else that I'd like to have happen, that would share with people the environments that I'm passionate about. I'd love to do that with Australia, with Australian landscapes. And I'd also really love to do that with New Zealand landscapes. Um, and I'd say more 10 years. I'm going to throw another little goal out there, something that I've got that I'm working on and really excited about. I don't know how I'm going to
Okay.
do this, but I want to make a movie.
A movie?
Yeah, I always thought that it'd be really cool to work on a movie and be part of a creative design team to do an environment or a concept design for some aspect of a feature film. And then I thought,
Like
well, why don't I just make my own?
I
So
was about to say, what kind of movie?
I really love stop motion animation.
Like claymation almost?
Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
heard of Wallace and Gromit?
Love Wallace and Gromit. Exactly like that. Yeah. But probably not so cartoonish, probably a little bit more realistic, and it might be something historical because I love
Sure.
history. So I'd love to do something that was based on a true story or a series of true stories that interconnect in some way.
Mhm.
So that's
Definitely.
something that I'd love to do in the next 5 to 10 years. But where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years? I still see myself living in the South Island of New Zealand. I love it here. I just see myself doing a little bit more travel, taking on bigger, more ambitious projects, sharing that with more and more people online, and probably just moving on to the next step personally on the family front, and probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have little mini artists running around this house. So that's something else that I'm looking forward to, very much so. So yeah, that's where I see myself in the next few years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think is that all? I think that's all.
That was yeah, that was 9 questions and some fantastic questions at that, Cody. I really
I
hope,
really,
yeah.
yeah,
Look, I hope this has been helpful and that you've gotten something out of this. I really appreciate you
definitely.
taking the time to write to me. As people would have also gathered, we know each other as well. From the last couple of years of me being able to coach you and with your painting and your art, and it's just been such a pleasure watching you just
Yeah.
grow as an artist and take on bigger and bigger challenges, like, and
Mhm.
seeing what you're being able to do now with your wildlife painting, with still life, with various subjects that you choose to do. I'm insanely proud of you and what you're able to do. But I just, when I saw this email come through with these questions, I just thought, man, this would make a great podcast. So thank you for agreeing to join me on this podcast, and thank you for interviewing me.
You're absolutely welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Cody, it's been a blast. I'm going to be talking
Sure.
with you again very, very soon. But
Yeah.
look, just to let people know out there who have listened to this interview, where can they see more of your work online?
Cody at CodyOldham.com is where is my website.
Perfect.
And,
But your website, I know, has a contact form, so people could get in touch with you through your contact form. And you're going to start
yep,
doing videos soon as well, right?
yep. That this cassowary behind me, that's gonna be my first. Now
Brilliant.
it's not gonna be as in detail as yours. Like there's a lot of skipping ahead of a few things, but it's kind of a start. And as I start to dive into it, I'll start to get more into the process.
Perfect.
But that was kind of a day painting. It took me about a day to do that one, a few
Perfect.
hours.
Perfect.
So I just wanted to see how it would go, see what happens.
That's awesome, man. That's absolutely awesome. Well, Cody,
All
this
right,
has been a blast. I will catch up with you again very, very soon. Thank you so
all right.
much for joining us on the creative endeavor. And
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
awesome. All right. Take care, Cody. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Creative Endeavor, and a big thank you and shout out to Cody for interviewing me. Now, of course, as you heard, you can find more of Cody's work on his website. I've put a link in the description down below, but he can be found at www.codyoldham.com. Now, Cody knows I'm a huge fan of his. I know he's going to go really far in his art career, and now I am the proud owner of a Cody Oldham original. I've got this thing here hanging up in my studio now, and I just love it. This depicts some mountains near where Cody lives in Colorado. It's just beautiful. I'm gonna treasure this for many years, Cody. Now, if you enjoyed this episode of The Creative Endeavor, then please make sure you hit that like button. If you want to come back for more and see more podcasts like this or some of my painting tutorials, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but most important, make sure you're subscribed through my website at andrewtischler.com. Simply hit that subscribe tab into your name and email address. It's free to do so, and I'm in touch with my subscribers regularly. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.